I've got the beautiful and talented Kylen Mills joining me to provide a fresh perspective on Steve Kerr's infatuation, obsession, whatever the proper verbiage is. He loves his point guards. He loves having those little dudes out there. And I decided to do a little math. And I've said my piece. I spent all weekend. People are probably sick of me, Kylen. So I'm going to defer to you and maybe get some differing opinions. Maybe you'll be reinforcing what I've been saying. But we're going to talk about what's going on with this minute distribution and the development of the Warriors youngsters, the focus or lack thereof in terms of the future of the Warriors. A lot to talk about. And we're going to break it all down next. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. You can follow Kylen Mills on all social media platforms at her name. It's super easy. At Kylen Mills. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Threads at Dog Wild. Kylen, it is great to see you. And before we get going, the Warriors have a winning streak. I think it's the second time all year they have one of these. We haven't seen many of them. What is your reaction, or what was your reaction watching the game last night? And a game that, again, I wasn't impressed just because it was a 4-point win over one of the worst teams in the NBA. What was your thoughts? Were you more happy than I was? And how are you doing?
Doing well, Cy. Good to see you. Good to be back with you. With the way the Warriors have been playing this season, I feel a little bit like you have to take the wins where you can get them. But there's a big but on that. A big concern for me is why they can't perform in the third quarter. It's something we talked about last season. They struggled with. They were so good just 2 seasons ago at coming out and dominating teams in the third quarter. My big concern was seeing that lead evaporate. I think it was around a 16-point lead at the half, very quickly down to single digits, down to 4 or 5 points to end the third quarter. Why can the Warriors not perform in the third quarter? I know you brought up stats on this program time and time again about how there's been such a huge difference in the way they perform in third quarters during that 22 championship run compared to the last 2 seasons. So that was a frustrating part of the game for me, is that they came out really strong. They looked good in the first half, and then they let the lead completely slip away, and it ended up being a way closer game than it should have been because of how they performed. Like you said, the Portland Trail Blazers are a team that is struggling. They have no pieces currently, one of the worst in the NBA. So this should have been a bigger win for the Warriors based on the talent that they have. One positive, though, the big positive for me was Trayce Jackson-Davis finally getting the run that he deserves. I still would like to see more of Trayce Jackson-Davis, but Dario Saric running into some foul trouble in the second quarter opened the door for Trayce Jackson-Davis, and he showed exactly why we have been calling for more of him, finishing with 14 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, a big block. I thought he looked really good. I want to see more of him. This has to continue.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree with you. I feel like that was the highlight of last night, was the fact that Trayce Jackson-Davis actually got an opportunity, played 17 minutes and change, and he delivered. Are you afraid, like I am, that Steve Kerr finally listened to what a lot of people have been clamoring for, more size, and more specifically, the young rookie Trayce Jackson-Davis? Do you think we're going to see more of him, or is it going to go back to nice seeing you, but I like Kevon Looney, I like Smalls, I want Wiggins to play center now? Do you think this is going to be something we start seeing, or is it going to be more of the same where it was like a one and done and we might see him again next month?
Unfortunately, I don't trust Steve Kerr because time and time again, his rotations do not make sense. There have been multiple games this season specifically where Moses Moody has played really well, and Steve Kerr has addressed that. And then the next game, he's out of the rotation without any explanation, and we don't really know why. And I know Steve Kerr likes to point out, matchups. I, sometimes have to tweak my rotation based on matchups, but the bottom line is if a player is competing and playing really well, why are you going to take them out of the rotation? I do not understand that. I wouldn't be surprised if suddenly TJD doesn't play next game. Like, you just never know with Steve Kerr. Unfortunately, I feel like, especially during these last couple of years, he leans more into his veterans. He leans more into his favorites. He likes to go small. And especially if you're a bigger player, you won't necessarily get the run that you deserve. And that's something we've talked about a lot here on the show. For example, Jonathan Kuminga, we have felt like needs a longer leash. Moses Moody. And I think now we're starting to see with the amount of playing time Brandon Pajemski is getting that maybe it's just Kerr's aversion to bigger players. I don't know. It seems like young guys and bigs don't necessarily get a fair shot. They don't necessarily get worked into the rotation based on how they're playing. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of the same. What do you think?
No, I completely agree with you. In fact, and the Brandon Pajemski, the fact that he's getting minutes, he led the team in minutes in last night's game. He played a total of 33 minutes, 24 seconds, again, led the team. And when I saw that, it made me, I think, contemplate like you did, is Kerr's rotations are the players he's choosing to play is his thought process more so who can dribble the ball, who can handle the ball. I feel like that's what he cares about the most. It's your ball handling skills and your shooting. Shooting, I think, is important as well. And if you're not at an absolute, top level in those two categories, like, you're not going to get minutes. He suddenly just lacks faith in you. I decided to break down the minutes last night because the Brandon Pajemski thing, and I don't think you and I hope I speak on your behalf as well, saying this, that there's no complaints with Pajemski playing. He's been awesome, right? But why not give this same leeway to Kuminga and Moody, Trace Jackson Davis? This is the future of your team, and I want to touch on that subject in just a moment, whether or not these sacrifices in terms of development, in terms of minutes given to these young players, if it's wise to do so. I mean, it's not like there's no future for the Warriors after this season. Like, there are going to be years to come, and do you want to sustain the success? And the way he occurs treating these young players is hurting that process, is hurting that development. But we'll talk about that in just a minute, because I wanted to explain to you and to the audience this breakdown of the minutes. Brandon Pajemski, again, played 33 minutes last night. Stephen Curry, who played 31 minutes last night, was third on the team in minutes. Second on the team in minutes was Chris Paul, who played 31 minutes, 36 seconds. So those three combined, when I added up their minutes, right, there's 240 minutes total you can allocate to all your players on a roster. The simple math is 5 players are on the court. Each one of them can play 48 minutes total. That comes out to 240. Those 3 players, those 3 point guards combined, took up 40% of all the minutes possible. That's nearly half for just for point guards. And we're routinely seeing 2 point guards out there when Chris Paul has been hurt and he might miss tomorrow night's game. Instead of seeing, a more bigger athletic players play, we're seeing Corey Joseph get minutes, right? Like, it's a point guard obsession. It's an infatuation. And I guess, what I want to ask you, Kylen, is what is your reaction to the fact that nearly half of all the playing time on this roster is given to small point guards? Like, how do you feel about that? Because I don't like that at all. What are your thoughts?
I think it's a problem because the Warriors need more size and they need to utilize the size that they have. It's something I've pointed out and we've talked about in the past, is that the Warriors wanting to go small. The whole strategy and concept is to run teams out of the gym. You want to push the pace, use the guard speed, use the ball handling abilities. And yes, you have a young player like Brandon Pajemski who can probably do that, but Steph Curry and Chris Paul are older players who aren't as fast as they were 5-6 years ago. Chris Paul has never been a player who's been great in the open court. He's more of a half-court guy who likes to work and run an offense. Steph Curry is getting older. The Warriors need to try to reduce some of the mileage on his legs so that he can be sustainable to perform at the level they want him to perform at all season long. So to me, the Warriors should not be leaning into going smaller at this point. And I like Brandon Pajemski. I think he's played well. I don't necessarily think he should be leading the team in minutes. And we saw that last week as well. And, 37 minutes at one point. I don't think that's necessary either. There has to be a middle ground. And I'm happy that he's getting opportunities. I want to see Brandon Pajemski play. I like him. I think he's got a strong basketball IQ. I love the energy, the intensity that he brings. But for him to play 37 minutes a night, and then you look at, Trace Jackson Davis, this was the first time he's really gotten run, not getting to play. Moses Moody's minutes being cut night in and night out, and he doesn't get nearly enough run that I think he deserves to get. I want to see him getting 20 minutes a night. He never hits that. To me, it's a little bit of a head scratcher. And then, like I said, I just feel like in general, the Warriors shouldn't be going smaller at this point. Utilize the size that they have. I think Dario Saric has played really well. I think Jonathan Kuminga needs a longer leash. We saw last night what Trace Jackson Davis can do. That's a poor reflection of how the coaching staff has been using him up till this point. He has not gotten enough opportunities. It shouldn't have taken this long for him to show what he can do. He should have gotten more opportunities. And you cannot assess a player, especially a young player, in a 5-minute time period. That's not enough for them to work themselves into the game or maybe play through some kinks or mistakes that come with being young. So it's a little bit frustrating that it took us this long to get to this point where Trace Jackson Davis had opportunities, but more Jonathan Kuminga, more Moses Moody. I think Dario Saric has been a great addition. Why are 3 point guards playing the most in a game? It does not make sense or add up to me.
Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree with you. And we're going to have a lot more to discuss here. We got some Draymond Green news that came out today. Shams Charania has been just covering this thing impressively with breaking news, on almost everything related to Draymond Green. So we'll talk about what he reported and give you folks our thoughts on that. Got to talk, the future of the team, just because the way the approach is that we're seeing, it's like the Warriors are going in on this all or nothing philosophy, acting like they can easily win a world championship this year. I'm not ruling that out, but you got to look ahead too. I mean, you can't sacrifice the future for a team that is aging and that likely will not win a chip. So we got a lot more to talk about. First, though, we got to give some love to one of our sponsors, eBay Motors. And if you own a vehicle, it's a fantastic resource for you in terms of finding the right parts for your vehicle. And our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a daily draft, scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's see who Josh Lloyd has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. And Kylen, I'll ask you to pick one of these 5 so we can get a more detailed analysis from Josh Lloyd. And the 5 players that Josh Lloyd has provided some analysis for this week: Brandon Pajemski, Terry Eason, who I'm not familiar with at all. I think he plays for the Houston Rockets; Grayson Allen of the Phoenix Suns; former Warrior James Wiseman; and Malaki Branham. I've never heard of him. He plays for the Spurs. Which one of those 5, Kylen, would you like to hear some more analysis on?
Gotta go with the Warrior, Brandon Pajemski. I am curious, though, to hear some analysis on Wiseman, because I haven't been watching Detroit real closely. I know it hasn't been a great year for him. To see if the Warriors ended up on the better end of that trade. Ooh, that's a tough one. Do we go with Wiseman or Pajemski?
Let's do both. Why not? So real quick, James, I'm curious too. I saw James Wiseman and I was like, So Josh Lloyd with James Wiseman writes, quote, Isaiah Stewart is hurt and Wiseman has produced the last 2 games. That's going to be a very bad look for the Warriors, by the way, if James Wiseman turns into a real player. Side note, confidence in him is low, but the numbers and opportunity appear to be there. I'm now curious to look up his numbers. And then what he wrote about Brandon Pajemski, quote, Pajemski has looked comfortable as a starter for the Warriors and is widely available in fantasy leagues. He contributes across the board. Yeah, we've been saying that as well. So Josh Lloyd from Locked On Fantasy Basketball is going to help you win your fantasy championship. And eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. If you got a personal experience about buying a part, sorry, that was the copy telling me if I have a personal experience. Sorry. So look, I've used eBay Motors, and again, what I've said before, and I'll say again, there's something that feels really good, especially if you're an OCD neurotic weirdo like me. There's something that feels so good about dragging the part to the little folder at the top, because if it turns green and you get the check mark, you know that part's the right fit for your vehicle. And I personally love it. I think it's a great resource. The prices are really good. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. And while you're subscribing to things, also follow Kylen Mills. She's available on all social media platforms at Kylen Mills. Kylen, what did Shams Charania say about Draymond today, if you have that information? And why not add your thoughts while you're at it, too, in terms of the latest news on his suspension?
So the latest news on Draymond Green's suspension is that it's expected to last at least 3 weeks, according to The Athletic. Anthony Slater has reported on this as well. I know you pointed out Shams. While he is going to counseling, receiving therapy, and those types of things, the big headline just that he's expected to be out at least 3 weeks, right, Cyrus? Is there anything else to it?
Correct. Yeah, and just to add to that, I think they mapped out that it's going to be early January when we can expect him to come back, which is a little later than I thought, because usually with indefinite suspensions, we did the research on this. Typically, in recent history, whether it was Gilbert Arenas, Malik Monk, John Morant, it's always been 8 or 9 games. So it's likely going to be quite a bit more for Draymond Green in this case. So if we're talking 3 weeks, if we're talking early January, that likely means we're not going to see him back until probably in the homes. The Warriors have a really long homestand that stretches all the way until Wednesday, January 10th. So probably going to see him somewhere during the homestand near the end of it. Kylen, this is the part that concerns me about this latest suspension, on top of all the obvious stuff, right? Draymond Green does not usually come back from suspensions, does not usually come back from injury absences on top of his game. He's usually rusty. You see his conditioning drop off a little bit. You could tell in-game conditioning is his way of maintaining his shape. What are your thoughts and any concerns on Draymond not only coming back in January, but the fact that we're probably going to need a couple weeks before we see a positive impact from him? And also, do you have any thoughts about his impact on the lineup? Because I feel like there's already a lot of problems getting minutes for everyone. Your thoughts on all that stuff, Kylen, if you don't mind.
Yeah. By the way, did you see that? Speaking of, you brought up John Morant. Do you see that he's coming back and it's going to be a nationally televised TNT game tomorrow? Since we were on the subject, I'm very excited to see how that turns out. Grizzlies taking on the New Orleans Pelicans, I believe, tomorrow. So that'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Regarding, because he's been out for a while, 25-game suspension. Regarding Draymond Green's suspension, it'll be very interesting to see how it affects the Warriors in terms of the lineup, the chemistry. I mean, I still don't think the rotations are figured out. They're far from figured out. So, you know, I'm very curious to see where the Warriors are at in January, because it's a long time from now. There still is a lot to be worked out. So I think it'll be interesting to see, just based on where the Warriors are at in a month. I mean, this team has been inconsistent, up and down. Like I said, I don't think Steve Kerr has figured out the rotations at all. Will we be any closer to being solidified in January? Will they be playing well? Will they be struggling? The thing is, with this team, I can't guess, because they are inconsistent. To me, they have played below expectations based on the talent level on this roster so far this season, but it's the Warriors, so you can never count them out. They can suddenly flip on a switch or pull it together at any moment in time. At least I believe that. I don't know about you, but it's the Warriors to me.
Yeah.
All of a sudden everything could come together and they could start playing well. You just don't know. And that's why I think it's so hard to predict what's going to happen to this team and exactly, more specifically, how the Draymond Green suspension in return is going to impact the team. I think the suspension was deserved. I think it was warranted. That's something I've said openly. And I hope that he gets the help that he needs. The behavior from Draymond recently is concerning. It was beyond just, hey, he's fiery. To me, it was more reckless than Draymond Green, who's smart enough to know better, should be doing. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like he has something going on. So I hope that he works through it. I hope that he's able to come back. But it's hard to say how his return is going to impact the team, because who knows what's going to be happening in a month from now. I mean, it's just very hard to predict. Steve Kerr has addressed the fact that he doesn't have rotations figured out. They've gone through losing streaks this season. This is one of their first winning streaks all season long. Are they going to figure things out in the next month? I don't know, but I will say a positive is seeing the young players get the opportunities they have. Trace Jackson-Davis getting to play. Jonathan Kuminga getting back in the starting lineup. I wouldn't have minded seeing him starting sooner than Draymond getting suspended. I wanted to see more of Kuminga before that. So I think that there are some positives, opportunities for some of the young guys to take some of those minutes. Will this rotation be any closer to being ironed out in January? Who knows, Cy? You know, I just think Steve Kerr, he's got a lot to figure out. And I don't think he's utilized the young players to the best of their ability this season. I don't.
Well, that's again, I think everyone knows how I feel about that. And I love hearing you say that. When we come back, Kylen, I'd love to know your thoughts on whether or not I just want to know your thoughts on the Warriors' lack of focus on the future beyond this year, because the best way to develop talent is to play them. I think that goes without saying. And I don't see the benefit of trying to force veterans to get minutes if you're not a legitimate world championship contender, right? And so I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, like, do you feel, when we come back, if you feel this team really is still in the championship hunt? And if not, like, what is the point of trying to work Wiggins in? What is the point of trying to get Clay 30 minutes instead of, say, 25 or 20? What is the point of playing Chris Paul 31, 32 minutes when, like, they're not going to be around in a year or two probably, or they're not going to be nearly, have the same impact. So I'd love to get your thoughts on just the fact that Kuminga and Moody, despite everything they're doing positively, just can't catch a break when it comes to playing minutes. Everyone's heard me and then some on that. So we'll have more with Kylen and the show in just a moment after we give some love to Gametime, a ticket. Kylen, let me ask you this while we do the Gametime read. Are there any events that you've gone to recently where you've had to buy tickets?
Yeah, of course.
Like what? What have you gone to recently?
Well, I am haven't gone to yet, next weekend for my dad's birthday, a Bulls game.
Oh, wow. Good for you. That's awesome. There you go.
We just bought tickets. We haven't physically gone to the game yet, but we're going.
Love it. So, well, look, and you're going to a Bulls game. People love going to Warriors games. Whatever the event is, the best way to get tickets, and even if you got to wait till last minute, especially, there's no better place than Gametime. Gametime is the app. It's the platform, website, whatever you want to call it, to get tickets, whether it's last minute, whether you need a view of the seats, because their app gives you an awesome picture of what it's going to look like based on the seats that you're considering buying tickets for. And maybe the best part is a low price guarantee. Let's say you buy tickets from Gametime and you happen to be perusing some other ticket brokers out there, and so all of a sudden you notice, whoa, these tickets are cheaper than what I spent on Gametime. Gametime offers a low price guarantee. They're going to refund whatever that difference is, so that no matter what, you're paying the cheapest price possible for your tickets to Gametime. And Kylen, that's where you got to go to get your tickets, unless you got to hook up, of course. But download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Kylen, there you go, $20 off your tickets for that Bulls game. And your dad is stoked, by the way. That's really thoughtful of you to take him to a Bulls game. Is he ecstatic?
We're giving it to him for his birthday, which is next week, so he actually doesn't know yet. So hopefully he doesn't watch this show. He doesn't regularly watch Locked On Warriors because he's a Bulls fan, but he'll tune into us every once in a while if I tell him something interesting happened. So he doesn't know yet, but he will be excited. Diehard Bulls fan, loved the Bulls in the 90s. So, it's always good to throw it back and get back out to the United Center.
Well, that does beg the question, does he not watch every show because he's a Bulls fan, or is he just too busy? Or Is he, or maybe my parents are weird because my parents watch every episode.
Do they
Thank you, Mom and
really?
Dad. Oh yeah.
No, I also so like throughout my career, like I've just been on TV podcast programs so much, like they don't watch, you know what I mean? Like they don't watch every game. They didn't watch like when I worked at Cron, I'm on 5 days a week. Like they aren't sitting around watching 5 days a week. So yeah, I don't know.
Well, it's just, and you're also way more active in the media scene than I am. So what you just said could be the reason why. But regardless, Kylen's dad, if you're watching, happy early birthday, and have fun. And Kylen, if
I'm telling him not to watch this episode now because it'll be a giveaway.
Well, whatever you're doing for tickets, download the Gametime app, create that account, and again, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. For the everydayers, Kylen and I are back at it tomorrow night. Warriors Celtics post-game, a rematch of the 2022 NBA Finals. You can follow Kylen Mills on all social media platforms at Kylen Mills. So Kuminga and Moses Moody on the season, their minutes are not where I certainly like. It sounds like you're not happy with the minute distribution either. On the season, Jonathan Kuminga is averaging 20.6 minutes per game. That is less than what he averaged last year, which was 20.8. And then Moses Moody's averaging just 18.8 minutes per game. As you mentioned, it's been awfully tough to see him crack that 20-minute mark. I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense. These two are quite possibly the future of the organization. You can see Kuminga's frustration at times. A source close to Kuminga told me a couple weeks ago when he was briefly taken out of the rotation. I don't know if you folks have forgotten about that. For a moment there, he just was out of the rotation. And then in that clip, I think it was the Clippers game where Kerr decided to bring him in late third quarter. And now we see Kuminga all the time again because Kuminga had a great game. The point is, it's frustrating me to no end. I also feel for these kids because they're both young. They're both 21 years old. And this cannot be having a positive impact on them in terms of confidence and developing their game. I legitimately feel sorry for these two. Like they're doing everything they can, and they're being rewarded for that with watching older players, some of whom are on the decline, get more minutes than them. What are your thoughts on this whole fiasco?
I mean, I support a lot of people who are suggesting they hope that the two of them get traded so that they get a real opportunity elsewhere. And it's sad to say, but I don't think the way that they've been utilized has been fair to them this season. I felt the same way last season. Like, how much longer can this go on? I just feel like, what do these third year guys need to do to get their fair shake at playing time when they're both playing well? I think Moses Moody made a huge jump from last year to this year. Last year, he wasn't utilized, he had all these DMPs, and then all of a sudden he gets put in the rotation in the playoffs and he performs well, which to me is evidence that he was ready to be playing all season, and there really was no reason for Steve Kerr to not play him. And I felt, now Jonathan Kuminga struggled last year during the playoffs, so he's not necessarily the case study in that situation, but I do feel like there were lots of times where Jonathan Kuminga needed the opportunity to play through some mistakes and to develop, and he wasn't given that. And I still feel like this season, neither of them are being given the minutes they deserve. How are they going to reach their full potential when they don't have the opportunity to play more? And with the way the roster is constructed now, you've got Draymond Green who's hurt, Andrew Wiggins, Klay Thompson struggling. Like, this is a golden opportunity for both of those guys to be getting more significant playing time. And it hasn't happened. Even last night's game, Moses Moody, 18 minutes is better than when he's played 10 or 12, but still, you've got Brandon Pajemski, who's a rookie, and he's playing 30 plus a night all of a sudden. It doesn't really add up to me, but I think that JK and Moody deserve better.
I agree. And if a trade is what's needed to be done, so be it. But just don't let these two have never mind just the impact negatively you're having on their psyche. If you continue playing them like this, their value is going to diminish as well. I mean, trade, do something. You feel bad for them. What do you think? Why do you think Kerr, like Kerr's had one good year in the last 5 years, and that was 2021, 2022 when they won the championship. in that season, there was no Brad Wanamaker for him to give too many minutes to. There was no Ty Jerome. There was, this year, fortunately, the point guards are good, right? So at least he's giving minutes to point guards that have talent, referring to Chris Paul and Brandon Podziemski. But in 2022, outside of Stephen Curry, your point guards were a two-way player named Chris Chiozza, who we didn't see that much. He mostly was playing spot minutes, fill-in minutes. And then we had Draymond Green, who once upon a time used to be a high-usage ball handler offensively. He used to be a very traditional point guard, and we don't even see that anymore. And something changed. I keep looking back to that 2022 year as an example of why you don't need a lot of playing minutes for a traditional point guard out there. It's not necessary. They won a title with Stephen Curry and Draymond Green being your primary ball handlers. What do you think's changed, or what are your thoughts on just this odd shift in philosophy?
It doesn't make sense. Honestly, Cyrus, what are my thoughts?
Yeah.
I just think a lot of the things that Steve Kerr has done the last 2-3 seasons. I guess we can't really complain as much when they won a championship, but last season and this season, there just have been so many decisions that are head scratchers. Just looking back, I don't want to get too much into the Ty Jerome things. I know people like to get on you in the comments, Cy Jerome, but Anthony Lamb and Cy Jerome, it didn't make any sense to me. This season now it's Brandon Podziemski, who is suddenly burst into the rotation. And again, I like him. I don't hate it. Moses Moody, meanwhile, can't do anything to save his life to play more than 20 minutes. There's a lot of things that Steve Kerr has done the last 2 seasons that don't make sense to me. I do think that this team, though, could be good if they figured out the rotations. If Andrew Wiggins plays the way that he did last night, Klay Thompson may not be the Klay Thompson of the past, but I actually think this team has the talent that if they even get a 80% Klay Thompson consistently, that this team could still be contenders. I actually do believe that. The more I think about it, the more I believe that. I feel very encouraged by the promise of the young players, Moody, Kuminga, Podziemski, Trace Jackson-Davis. I think they're all great additions. And we also have to keep in mind, Gary Payton II hasn't been healthy, their best perimeter on-ball defender. I still think this team has a lot of potential, but I do think the rotations and poor decision-making by Steve Kerr has majorly impacted and led to the record that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, agreed. Any final thoughts as we wrap up the show? We'll be back at this tomorrow night. They play the Celtics. Real fast, while we have just a second, I want to give let people know, if they want to learn about sports journalism, I'm teaching a class at Cuesta College in San Luis Obispo. The course number is JOUR 203. Register for that, and you could even do some work with this program. It's a sport. It's a class where I'm going to be teaching sports journalism, and you can also take on an internship type role with this program. True story. We'll even give you some airtime once you get some practice. So just want to give a quick plug there. Again, it's Cuesta College, San Luis Obispo. Register for Journalism 203A. And again, you'll get some hands-on instruction on how to be a sports journalist, and you can even help out Kylen and I on this program. Any final thoughts, Kylen?
No, I think that's amazing. Cyrus, I am going to sit in on one of your classes this season. I want to log in. Can I be a guest speaker? Because I want to see you in action teaching. Cy, for all of those at home, has been working very hard, grading papers, molding the young minds and future journalists of this world. So kudos to you, Cy. And I'm excited. You guys should sign up for that class.
Absolutely. And quick strike. I don't think anybody I don't think people were hating on Klay. He just had a very bad start to the year. There's no hiding that. So,
the numbers say it. You know what I mean? The worst numbers of his career. I don't think anyone is trying to hate on Klay. I'm not.
No. And I'm personally really happy to see his shot starting to fall again. The Wiggins thing, I'm much more skeptical about, just because the last night was not the first good game of his. He's had a few this year. His net rating was still the negative. His defense, I'm still a little suspicious of. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'd rather see Kuminga than Wiggins. But Klay is doing a marvelous job. Kylen, this is always fun. Any final thoughts?
Nope.
All right. And you and I were, I don't think we were at all ignorant tonight. That's one of our.
It's ignorant. You're being ignorant.
ignorance tonight, folks. I think we were on it. So, all right, Kylen, love you. Love everyone else. And again, we'll see you tomorrow night. Warriors and Celtics, a rematch of the 2022 NBA Finals. Bye-bye.
You stay classy, San Francisco.